USA podcast where we put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Mappable USA studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, today we're going to talk about opportunity zones. We're going to talk about it from maybe like a creator point of view, which is kind of interesting. And before we do that, let's introduce Vicky Hutchmala from the World Token Market and the QOZ Marketplace. Vicky, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous, Ron. I'm always fabulous. And we live in the greatest city, Vegas, and now we are so excited because it's cooling down. It's actually in the 90s, and we're delighted. And we have an excellent guest today on our podcast, so let's get started.
I think that's a good idea. It's always good to go to the conferences here in Vegas. We meet a lot of interesting people, and Our guest today is certainly one of them. So let's introduce Gerry Reihsen. Gerry's the founder of the Coasis Coalition, and he's a member of 2 commercial law firms. Gerry, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. And I already know that you two are doing well.
Well, we try here, you know. Sometimes you have to work on East Coast time, so we get up very early in the morning here in Las Vegas a lot of times. So it's all good.
You get punchy by this time in the day, I'm sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, that's what the coffee's for, Gerry. You know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we met you over at the Any Size Deal conference and thought you were doing some really cool stuff, and we thought, yeah, we got to get this guy on our podcast. And sure enough, you're here today. So I really want to thank you right off the bat for taking the time out to do this. But let's talk about you first. Can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you've been doing, how you got to this point where you are right now?
Well, of course. So foundationally, I'm a securities and corporate attorney, and I started practicing when dinosaurs roamed in the 1980s, and did that, practices outside counsel with a large law firm called Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher for about 10 years, and got antsy to get out on my own, be more entrepreneurial in the 90s. Ended up co-founding a telecom software company that had the then leading soft switch for 3G networks with 2 fabulous partners from Nortel. And then that sold in a couple of years to a company called Zone, Z-H-O-N-E. It's now Dazon Zone or something like that, public company. Then co-founded a investment fund platform focused mostly on real estate investment funds and mostly serving retail capital, but we raised capital from all channels. Did that for about 15 years, grew that from 0 to over $12 billion in assets under management before the big crash. And then, kind of managed that disaster for about 5 years, including some other opportunities. And then now I'm in between entrepreneurial efforts, and I founded a company called Coasis Coalition Companies, and its focus is to provide a variety of services to the Opportunity Zone space. We discovered the Opportunity Zone statute in early 2018. It blew our minds. We immediately kind of cut back on other things we were doing and started a conference series, which obviously got curtailed by COVID, but that was very successful while it lasted. We provided consulting. I'm also, as you mentioned, with 2 law firms. We provide all kinds of services to help people structure a variety of differentiated Opportunity Zone arrangements, not just real estate development, businesses, investments in other tangible assets. So now we've got a variety of things we're focused on, and not just Opportunity Zone stuff. We're using what Peter Thiel coined as technological complementarity, combining HI, human intelligence, with artificial intelligence to do some real estate investing as well in a fund environment. So we're doing a whole variety of things. I have 4-decade background in securities, investment funds, investment fund platforms, and all kinds of things like that. Spent 2/3 of my career as an entrepreneur. And so it all regenerates, and we're doing that again.
Well, you sound like a Renaissance man, Gerry. Like you just got your finger in a lot of different things. That's great. But
well, I appreciate that.
Let me ask you this question. When Ron and I first saw Opportunity Zones in the program when it first came out 2017 or so, we could see the fabulous potential of this program all around. So after 4 years now, what do you think about how it started, where it is now, and where it's going in the future?
Here's the interesting thing. What I really loved about the Opportunity Zone concept is that it's a market-based system. It's hard for people who do a lot of their work in underinvested communities to understand market-based systems. They expect a certain amount of every other kind of incentive into those spaces has kind of been a little more tied to the people there and kind of serving them more directly. What I like about the Opportunity Zone incentive system is that the investors and the investor vehicles that are used have a choice, and the people in those communities have a choice. They can choose a whole range of things, from investing in all sorts of tangible assets, not just real estate. Most people don't realize that. You can invest in, and we have some concepts along those lines, other tangible assets, to businesses of all types, with some exceptions, although those exceptions actually can be dealt with. Supposedly the sin businesses can't be invested in, but
right.
That only applies at the QOZB level. At the QOF level, you could.
Right.
And sin businesses aren't what people think. They're odd, like gambling and liquor. There's not the real sins out there. They're not part of the sin business exception.
They just
and
lead
the other,
to the bigger sins.
yes, that perhaps they do. And the other thing I really loved about the Opportunity Zone concept is that many of these other programs become stilted or have the negative effects of gentrification. Since the incentives are so broad, you can bring in not only things that increase asset values in the space, which can have some negative consequences to some people in these underinvested communities, but it can bring in businesses as well, which can lift up the people in those communities as that community valuation goes up as well. So that's what I think is really amazing. Now,
exactly.
on the downside, I am astounded at how little investors have taken advantage of the incentive.
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that it's so incredible that after 4 years, there's people who don't even know what opportunity zones are, especially in the real estate industry, but also investors. They have no clue.
95% of the people who should know about it don't, and
exactly.
4% of the people who do know about it are very confused and have misapprehensions or misunderstandings about it. So these are only 1% of the people. So that means to me that 99% of business lawyers, financial advisors, fund managers, accountants are committing malpractice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unbelievable that every single person who deals in the commercial venue as a service provider or as an investor or a business operator does not accurately know about, or does not have a go-to source to accurately understand how the Opportunity Zone system can work for them. And when you think about the trillions of dollars of embedded capital embedded capital gains that can be accessed for this space, it just blows my mind, especially in a world where geography is it's kind of irrelevant, and it's pretty agnostic where you might locate a business. So
isn't that true? Yeah.
So I'm kind of amazed that now the real estate people have done the best job of accessing it, but there's a whole industry of real estate developers and investors who understand and have invested and developed in underinvested communities. So
yeah,
Go ahead.
Go on. It's a very what?
It's a very simple concept to make a real estate development work, because it is very place-based. To make an operating business work where the IRS has expressly and explicitly said they want businesses that have global revenue to work in an Opportunity Zone, it's a bit more of a challenge. So the real estate people, even before there were any regulations, adapted to it. The business side was really a bit of a mind bender, And it took 2.5+ years to get the full regulations out that could even get close to contemplating how any particular business might operate. But we have that now, and it still hasn't taken off. We've done a bunch of businesses, both from the legal side and investment side, but it still hasn't taken off. The traditional venture capitalists really have ignored it. There's kind of a growing non-traditional newbie group of venture capitalists that have adapted to it. They're going to be big winners.
Yep.
But the traditional venture capitalists haven't really adapted to it.
That's what's so great about, as you said, that's what's so great about opportunity zones is they offer like a win-win for everybody, whether you're the developer, whether you're the investor, whether you're the business owner or startup entrepreneur, or whether you're the person who actually lives in the opportunity zone. Everybody can benefit from this program, which is why it's so fabulous and why I'm so astounded that so many people don't have a clue.
There's still tens and tens of billions of investment in the space. But literally, there should be hundreds of billions in the space after what? We're coming up on 5 years.
Exactly.
And every little startup should consider whether they should set up as an opportunity zone arrangement. Businesses should consider whether they should restructure as opportunity zone businesses. Investors in all sorts of assets should be reconsidering having their investment arrangements on the opportunity zone structure. As divisions of large companies should be considering. I mean, look, McDonald's by accident is going to have restaurants in opportunity zones. They should have a separate subsidiary into which they put capital gains that they can grow on a tax-free basis. It's just insane that this hasn't happened. Now, I think the nice thing about the incentive is that it's very flexible, as I've said. It's very market-based, so you can be very overtly social impact focused, or you can be just, hey, we're people who create new assets and new jobs in the space, and we think that is a beautiful thing in and of itself. And the choice dynamic in a world where people seem to want to inhibit everybody else's choices, but the choice dynamic is fabulous. And I think it's fabulous that it's a very bipartisan, and it remains very bipartisan, even though it's been used as a political football in the past. But it remains very bipartisan because both parties have an interest in how it works. But and it looks like probably it will, the biggest gift to the opportunity zone space is going to be in the proposed legislation that it looks like some of it's going to pass coming up, which is going to substantially increase taxes.
Yes.
So that's going to be a huge gift to the opportunity zone space as people say, oh my gosh, I'm not used to having this much friction on my returns and on my business income. I better think about how to manage that.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think that legislation has a lot of problems associated with it. It's going to explode the opportunity zone space.
Yeah, it's no wonder why something like opportunity zones are a bipartisan issue, because the idea behind it, of course, is revitalization. So you're going to be either I'm pro revitalization. Who's going to be anti that? Who's going to come out and say no, I'm anti revitalization, right? So it's an easy way to be a bipartisan issue on that. But I think it's kind of interesting also how the business aspect of opportunity zones is a classic like movie plot twist where it all started with real estate, and now everyone's realizing, well, these startups and these businesses, they're the ones that are going to fuel the development, and they're more important than, let's say, a multifamily deal. And that's the whole plot twist in opportunity zones for me.
Well, yeah, I think I can give you some background as to why adoption in the business space and the venture capital space has been uninspired to date. And I think the reasons are this. If the opportunity zone system, the main benefit is tax-free upside after you hold your investment for 10 years or longer. In other words, you get a write-up in basis to fair value upon a disposition of an investment held 10 years or longer. So the point of the statute is to drive wealth creators to take their wealth, rapidly invested and underinvested communities, and hold their investments in those communities for the long term, for 10 plus years. Now, if all of the benefit is a step up in basis to fair value, then the most reliable incentive you're going to have is a reliable asset increase, value increase, right? That is pretty accepted in real estate. But in business, it's a very binary thing. You either are, if you're a venture capital investor, you kiss your money goodbye and you hope for upside. But it's in a proportion which is significantly more than 50%, you're going to get nothing. So you'll get no tax benefit if the business isn't saleable after 10 years at a reliable upside. So I think that's one of the things that has, to a certain extent, held back investment in business and venture capital stage companies. And as people become adapted to the opportunity zone space who invest in businesses, they're going to think about that a little more clearly and think about those businesses that have a likelihood of upside that can actually take advantage of the incentive, because it is a little expensive to set up these things and to be compliant. The other thing that holds back investment in business is there's already an existing tax incentive system for venture investing under Section 1202 and related sections of the tax code. And under Section 1202, you can eliminate from taxation the greater of $10 million of gain, or 10 times what you essentially paid for your investment, if you hold your investment for only 5 years. So there's an existing incentive system, and the other thing that's nice about that system is that if there is a loss, you can treat that loss as an ordinary loss and not have to take it only against capital losses, which makes losses much more valuable, as opposed to the opportunity zone system. If you have losses, it's just too bad, So the professional and traditional investors in venture capital are a little slow to adapt because, number one, like everybody else, they're working 9 to 5, and then they go home to their families, and their time is pretty much full, and learning something new is not at the top of their list. And number two, they do have a pretty strong incentive system already, but they're going to start to adapt, especially as we see the emergence of these new non-traditional venture capital platforms that are going to have some real success.
Interesting. So is Coasis more focused then on just business? You guys have a real estate aspect of it as well then?
Well, we serve everybody in this space. We do everything from consulting to as how to set up funds and fund platforms from a business consulting perspective. We assist people in designing and strategizing for capital formation. We have a relationship with a placement agent to help people raise capital, and then we have my law firms that serve. I have my own personal law firm, and I'm with a larger law firm called Ferguson Braswell, FBFK.law, that is a full-service Dallas, Houston, Austin, Silicon Valley mid-sized law firm that does all the legal work from real estate to intellectual property to corporate securities to M&A. So we have the ability to assist everyone, and we're out there because we have the conferences, the conference series, and because I speak at other people's conferences, I get called all the time. So every single player, from local economic development people who want to ask me, hey, my city wants to take advantage of it, we've advised them on how to set up, how to market that, and even how to generate deal flow themselves that they can hand on a platter to investors. To investors themselves. People just call up out of the blue, apart from the placement services that we're associated with. They call up out of the blue and say, I just sold my company for $100 million. Do you know who is worth investing with in the space? And we do know everybody. I mean, I go back 15 years in the fund space. Many of those people have adapted to the opportunity zone dynamic, and I know who kind of has integrity and who knows what they're doing, can help people with that, or help them set up for their own investments. So then we represent investment funds, and we represent real estate developers, and we represent businesses. We just, frankly, are entirely over the space from a consulting and a legal and to a certain extent capital formation dynamic.
Well, I would love to make that phone call to you, Gerry. Hey, Gerry, it's Ron.
Are you going to sell Mappable for $100 million? Yeah. I'll help you get that all set up. Here's the thing. That would be great. Here's the thing that people don't realize. If they have generated a capital gain of significance, there is almost no downside in setting up an opportunity zone investment structure. We can provide for them up to 37 months to find a place to put those dollars. And it's not like they get rid of the dollars. The dollars stay in a bank account they control. They can borrow those funds and use them for other things. And if they decide they don't want to make an opportunity zone investment, they've still deferred, because one of the benefits is, as you know, is you defer your taxation on capital gains until the time they decide they're not wanting to, and they liquidate and pay their capital gains tax then. So there's almost no downside if you have a significant capital gain in setting up structures that are flexible that you can use to make investments or not. It's just insane to me. Again, it's part of the insanity of the unawareness of this space that everybody who generates a large amount of capital gains doesn't say, okay, as a matter of course, I'm just going to set this stuff up as an opportunity zone vehicle that I control, and I can borrow the money. So let me give an example. So we have a crypto investor. We've spent a lot of time in the crypto space as an advisor as well. We were doing that long before Opportunity Zone. And that person generated a few tens of millions, and now he wants to diversify into the more traditional investment space. So we set up an Opportunity Zone, a captive Opportunity Zone vehicle, investment vehicle for him that he can control. And in the meantime, he's allowed to borrow money while he's looking for an investment from that structure, which he reinvests in crypto to generate more capital gains to put into his structure.
Now, see, it just goes to show, Gerry, that if you really want to be successful, you have to know the professional experts to help you get there. It's not a do-it-yourself thing when it comes, whether it's opportunity zones, whether it's capital gains investment, whether it's tokenization or crypto or blockchain, whatever it is, you need to have the professional who knows what you don't know to help you and advise you to get where you want to get to. I think that's you, Gerry.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, we just were so blown away by it in early 2018 when we discovered it that we're never going to see an incentive like this again unless it gets extended. It's just amazing. And so we spent a lot of time studying. We were very much involved in the rulemaking process. The fellow named Dan Kolosky headed that up as the direct report to Mnuchin, Secretary of Treasury, has become a good friend because we talked about it so much. I did comment letters on the rules. And frankly, I work with the top people in space. I don't mind saying who I love in the space. There's many of them. Matt Perush at Morris Manning. There's Jay Darby, who left the big firm because he's so focused on this. There's Blake Christian. I mean, we are on constant calls together. We have weekly kind of spitballing, skunkworks calls to make sure you understand it. The investors out there and the professionals at least need to know they need to look at it. And you're right. They need to go to somebody who's in it every day. There's no substitute for playing the game. I mean, you can imagine, you can be a fantasy football team guy all you want. Until you get on the field, you don't really know what the game is like.
Exactly. And there's a lot of people that pretend to be experts and pretend to know what they're talking about, but they really don't. And they pull the wool over people's eyes because the person they're talking to doesn't know either that these people don't know what they're talking about. It's like a vicious cycle.
I despise those people. So the nice thing is I've been in this space for 4 decades, right? And I've had my own businesses, very big, successful businesses that grew from zero to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in value. And I not only did the work as outside counsel in my professional career, but I engage all kinds of outside counsel, all kinds of accountants. Nobody, well, I don't want to overstate it because I suppose everybody can be bamboozled, but it'd be rare to be able to bamboozle me. And frankly, I'm kind of a curmudgeon, and I don't put up with a lot, so I kind of err on the side of not working with people.
Yeah, you sound like my kind of guy, Gerry.
But I tell you, the people, so I don't do business with people based upon what they can do for me. I do business with them based, this whole thing of, taking people golfing or whatever, to the Masters, to big events. It kind of gets under my skin. Besides which I don't like crowds. I don't want to go to the Masters. I mean, the Masters is okay. It's not that crowded. But in any event,
exception.
In any event, I do business based upon about the skill level and the integrity of the people I work with. And
Absolutely.
Fortunately, I've been in business long enough to be able to tell who's got skills, even if they're not in my direct profession, securities law and corporate law, which I'm obviously going to know very well. But the people in the tax side, people in the accounting side, I've just done so much work. I've been a public company independent director and audit committee chair. It's just and in this space, there's so much creativity you can have, but so much compliance you must have. You just have to work with the top people.
Exactly. And you have to develop that skill or that ability, whatever word you want to call it, to be able to recognize the people who have integrity and moral turpitude and only work with those people, because everybody else is a waste of your time and energy. And whether that person knows or doesn't know, a person with integrity will admit it and find out what they don't know, whereas somebody who's just, bringing you down the garden trail, they don't care. They just want to take you where they want to go regardless. And those are the people that we can do without.
Right. Yes. And yes. Just to clarify, we want to avoid the people with moral turpitude, because that is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But by the way, I do want to say I did mention a few people, and they are not exclusive. And I apologize to the great experts and high integrity people I also work with, and frankly, there's tons of fund managers who are high quality top fund managers, and there are tons that aren't quite there. So
exactly.
I wish I could mention them. I ought to create a database, kind of like Angie's list, Gerry's list.
Gerry's list of
Gerry's
top professionals.
Good guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, the people to avoid.
And by the way, Gerry, isn't golf a sin business? By the way, isn't it considered a sin
golf
business
courses, not golf itself. So I suppose you could sponsor a golf team, but golf courses are considered a sin business. Maybe because of the days back when they were using hoochie girls as your caddies. I remember there was a period of time in the 80s and 90s when that was kind of. But whatever the case may be, it's considered a sin business.
I told someone the other day.
The sin is that you're spending 5 hours away from your family doing something silly.
I was going to just say something like that. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I said, do you know that golf courses are sin businesses? How crazy is that? And he said, well, Ron, the way you play golf, it's a crime. So maybe.
Well, that's always. I love golf, but I'm so bad. I've never cracked a 30 handicap.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's funny. Hey, a couple more questions before we close this out, Gerry. A lot of people are creating these funds left and right, these opportunity zone funds. Some of them are involving real estate. Some of them are involving businesses. Some are involving both. Is there a distinction to be made when you create the fund that you have to declare it as a real estate fund or as a business fund?
Well, technically you don't. But attracting investors is a challenge if you don't have a targeted strategy. Right. I mean, number one, investors have to be careful who they put their money with, right? And they want to put their money with, again, people of integrity who have expertise and an attractive strategy that looks like it can produce returns. if you're saying you're investing in everything, okay, so what's your expertise? I mean, do you have expertise in any of those areas? So investors are going to. So I'll give you an example. I had a client come in. They weren't a client for very long because they didn't like my advice, and you're going to hear why. They had, and my advice, by the way, is not legal as such. It's business advice with a legal foundation. Frankly, whether I'm practicing as a lawyer or as whether I'm providing services as a consultant, I can't escape my background and who I am. So they came in and they had this concept in the opportunity zone space where they were going to buy historic buildings, and they were formerly with the Blue Man Group, and they were going to create immersive experiences in those historic buildings.
Oh, we know them.
Yeah, and I said, look, the problem is that you're going to be seeking investors that don't exist. There are investors who invest in historic real estate development, and there are investors who invest in entertainment productions. But investors who invest in both, I challenge you to find any. I encourage them to set up two separate funds, two separate investment vehicles, and since none of them had real estate experience but had good production experience, to partner with a good real estate developer person of some decades experience who would help on the historical tax credit side. They insisted that I was not accurate, and I've not heard that and then they ceased talking to me, and I've not heard that they raised any money. They're good people. I wish they would invest, but they might find that one needle in a haystack that wants to invest the heck out of that, which it would do if they could find that person. But look, I've had 4 decades actually, and closer to 4 decades than 3 full decades in the business and fund space. I know what investors want. I know what each capital channel wants. Some want more income, some want more capital growth. And newbies in the space who don't listen to me, a long time ago when I was practicing, I gave up trying to insist that my clients follow my advice, and I frankly just gave them advice, and then let the world affect them. And so
I bet you sleep better, right?
Yeah, I sleep better, but I do end up, and it's fine. I do end up with cases where that's just not going to be a client. Then they're not going to follow good advice. And they don't, and it's mutual, right? From their perspective, they don't want to be told they're wrong, and from my perspective, I don't want to be banging my head against the wall.
Yeah, well, that's true. You don't want to work with people that don't listen to you, because you could replace them with people who do.
Right, and frankly, I've learned that working with people who you really can get into is really beautiful. In fact, that's why I really prefer. I love consulting. I love helping people to build what they want to build, both legally and from a business consulting perspective and from a capital formation perspective. But I really love the tight, close bonds you can create by creating a team and building an enterprise. And that has been the biggest joys of my business career. To do those,
Absolutely.
To be fortunate to do that twice, and I'm hoping again. I'm building a fund platform right now to invest in very highly alternative assets in the opportunity zone space, and going to do that with some more great people, right?
Is that fund available now?
No, my problem is I'm overwhelmed with people who want help. So putting together my own fund platform. It's just been a time suck. And, the reality is I've been talking to some partners at the general partners level who are interested in investing as GPs, which is a very attractive thing for getting together a good fund. And I just haven't pushed it that hard. I kind of believe in to a certain extent, letting life tell you what to do, letting the world tell you what to do. At some point, one of these guys is going to say, look, it costs about $10 to $20 million to set up a good fund platform with multiple verticals underneath it in the various areas. At some point, one of them is going to say, look, either take my $20 million or I'm going away, and then I'll have to focus all my attention on that.
That's a hard problem to have, Gerry.
But I do. I do.
That's another call I like to make.
Well, here's the reality. Like we said, investors like to know you've done it. Hey, we did it from 0 to 12 billion assets under management in about 10 years. It was at the time the fastest growing fund platform that ever existed. It's a shame the recession came along.
Yeah. Hey, Gerry, I have one more question. A lot of these companies that come to you, are they like startups or they're pre-revenue? What's the percentage of those companies that do that?
The beautiful thing about the Opportunity Zone space is that nobody really has a leg up on me. In other words, the big firm, there's not enough people who understand the space at large firms or large established institutions. There's a certain proportion that just have to come to me, whatever stage they're at, or company. So, for instance, I'm representing a public company out of London to do a blockchain cryptocurrency mining and investment operations. It becomes very highly structured, but it's fabulous. So I would say this is the one area where, frankly, just having the skills and being in a more nimble environment is an advantage. Being able to put people together is an advantage. So my experience has been across the board. I will say one area where we've kind of become a go-to is in the what I call the family or family office captive Opportunity Zone investment vehicle space. We've kind of got that down to something that is highly repeatable, very reliable, and it creates I've probably got 30 clients in that space. And in a certain way, it also creates a little kind of, those are the kind of folks who are saying, hey, when can we invest in your GP? They're a whole, resource for me. And I haven't really, because I'm not really aggressive at being a salesperson. I haven't really pushed it that hard. But that is something where we've become kind of a real niche. But we do the whole thing, all the way from investment funds of hundreds of millions of dollars to helping investors with hundreds of millions of dollars, to real estate developers, some of the leading real estate developers in the country, to private equity investors and investment funds.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this podcast right now may want to get a hold of you after this conversation. What's the best way to reach you, Gerry?
Well, at the risk of being inundated, I've modified my phone so that calls that I don't know, I don't ring. But I've kind of grudgingly entered the new era, and I don't have a home phone anymore. I almost never use my office landline. If people want to, they can text or call me at 214-908-2009. And all of my emails are too long to go through right now.
Well, we'll link them. We'll link them instead. How about that on the show notes?
Yeah, why don't you link I've got 3 emails at my 2 law firms and my Coasis Services company. Yeah, why don't we just link all those?
Yeah. 214.
I'm envious of the
Dallas,
early
right?
people. Yeah, we're based in Dallas, but I've always been global. I started with a global law firm. I've had businesses in Hamburg, Australia, all over the world, Central Europe. So I'm very envious of the people who got on the internet early on, and they have like a 1-letter URL.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Exactly. But I'll tell you what. My big takeaway from this podcast is just if you have a business, you're just crazy not to even think about locating it and operating an Opportunity Zone, because there's just too many incentives not to. Vicki, what do you think? Has this been enlightening or what?
Absolutely. This is one of our, we always say this, Ron, this is one of our better podcasts, better guests. But this is a whole different point of view and talking about how really fabulous the whole Opportunity Zone program is if you know how to utilize the best experts like Gerry and be creative about what you're going to do to take advantage of the program. I think, Ron, that we need to do a second podcast with Gerry so that we can talk about the implications of tokenization and blockchain in the Opportunity Zone whole industry.
Yeah, and actually, I've thought about that. It would be interesting to kind of take different industries and different businesses and go through them. Just as an example, I got a strange call out of the blue about a year ago from the Texas Dry Cleaners Association. And they said, well, what can we do in the opportunity zone space? I said, well, what's your business model? So they gave me their business model, and I wrote them an article about how they can apply the opportunity zone incentives to it. So there's all kinds of things like that.
Exactly.
I have another business that came to me. FedEx actually sells its delivery regions, right? And they have contractors competing for that. Every one of those contractors can be set up as an opportunity zone business because they can create their base of operations in an opportunity zone space, and if you manage it right and compliant, and the whole point of being in business, besides loving what you do, is to do well economically. And if you can eliminate 20 to 40% of the tax friction and create for yourself a nest egg for 10 to 25 years from now when the statute expires in 25 years, why aren't people anyway, we've talked about this.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah. FedEx, McDonald's, get on it. What are you waiting for? This is crazy. Anyway, Gerry, thanks a lot for being a guest on the show today. We really appreciate it. And like Vicki said, we'd love to have you on again. I'm sure we'll do that. Vicki, thanks for co-hosting this episode. And folks, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast at MappableUSA.com. If you go to that website, scroll down a little bit, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best. Subscribe, and you'll never miss another one of our episodes. If you want to be a guest on the show like Gerry was today, there's a guest tab. Fill that out. We'll see what you can do about getting you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, send us an email at info@MappableUSA.com, or just leave a comment on whatever page you're listening to this on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. We'll see you next time on another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.